Welcome, Zoe here. In today's video, we're going to discuss the differences in the workflow between Integromat and Zapier. I'm going to also do a live automation example in each platform. So if you're wondering what platform you want to use for your automations, or you're just curious, or you're using one and maybe you want to migrate to the other one, maybe the grass is greener on the other side, or you're bored. Any reason you have, stick around. We're going to build out some automations. We're going to also discuss price. And at the end, I also have something that will help you out on that journey as well. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk about Zapier. The first thing I do when looking at a new tool or utility, I go to their website. Zapier here, the only two interesting things on Zapier's website or Integromat's website is going to be the integrations and the pricing. So the integrations are going to tell you which built-in apps and services across the internet that this platform integrates with natively. And pricing is going to tell you how much it's going to cost to communicate and run jobs across those integrations. So here for Zapier, the first thing that you want to do is go to Explore and go to apps that work with Zapier. Now this is going to give you a list of apps. There's thousands of them that will work with Zapier. What we're going to do is we're just going to use Gmail and we're going to use Airtable for our simple build today. So obviously it supports those two, but if I didn't know, I might type in Airtable and I'd say, oh great, they support Airtable. And I'd click on Airtable and you can see the integrations that you can do with Airtable. And the important part is going to be the triggers and actions. So these triggers and actions are going to tell you when you are connecting this app to Zapier, what things you can do. Integromat is the same. They have obviously pricing, which we'll go over later, and then apps and services. So they also have lots of apps and services and are building more and more. And again, it's kind of a similar flow where Airtable's right here, so I don't have to search for it, but you'd click on Airtable and then you could see the actual things that you can do with Airtable. Watch records, create, delete, read, update, search. So these are the most important things to look at on the two websites is the integrations that they have, what they can do, what you can do with the integrations, and then of course the pricing. So let's get in and build an automation. All right. So to begin building this automation, we need something to automate. I'm going to use Airtable to do that. If you don't know about Airtable, you should. I'll be making a video on Airtable soon. It is by far my favorite tool. I use it every single day for too many things to count. But in this example, we're going to pretend we are a restaurant. And at our restaurant, somehow we get people's phone numbers or something like that, maybe from registration or whatever. And maybe we send them a text link after they've had dinner and we ask them how well we did. And so let's just say that exists. We're just going to create a table called feedback, and the feedback is going to go in this table. We've got name. Let's get an email address. And just for sake of time, we're just going to say grade. And I'm going to add stars or rating. And we'll say 5 stars. All right. And we're going to create a form view of that. Zoe's Food Shack, I guess. Great food. Tell us how we did. And what was your overall experience? Name and email. All right. So this is our super simple form that people are going to fill out. So they're going to get a link in their cell phone or something like that, and the link's going to be to this handy little URL, and they're going to ask for your name, email, and how well was your experience. And I should say that maybe we want experience to be required and maybe not their name and email if they want to remain anonymous. So you can just click this little required flag, and now that is required. So I'm going to refresh this. So someone gets a link, and all of a sudden they come here and they're like, oh man, my name is Zoe. My email is whatever, zoe@zoe.com. And my overall experience was amazing. And I'm going to submit that. Thanks for submitting the form. This isn't part of it, but I don't like that submitting the form. So thanks. Thanks for stopping at Zoe's. We'll have that be the message when someone is done. Great. Now that we have that feedback form going, our next step is going to be, let's create that automation. So we're just going to send an email when someone submits this form. And let's actually only send an email if someone submits a form, submits like a rating of like 1 star. So if someone was super unhappy, we want to send an email to the manager of the experience. And so actually maybe we'll just add one more thing here, and we'll just say, or we'll just call it feedback. Make this long text, and we'll add this in too. So when someone actually goes to the form, they can actually put in some feedback for us and tell us what they liked or what they hated about going to Zoe's. I mean, it's not going to happen. The food's great, but we're just going to say just in case. So now that we've done that, let's actually create this in Zapier. So in Zapier, we're going to make a brand new Zap, and we're going to say when this happens. So the first thing that we want is Airtable. And so we're going to say when a new record happens, or when a new record's created. So I need to sign into Airtable here. So it's going to ask me for my API key. So you get your API key in Airtable by clicking in here and grabbing your API key from there. And now we will go back to, here we go. We'll go back here and we'll actually add that. Once I do that, it automatically connects with Airtable and I can click next. Now it's going to say what base to select. I need to select my base. Once your base is selected, it's automatically going to look and read the tables that are available in that base, and you can select them. So I'm going to select feedback for my table, and now I'm going to click continue. Now, when I click continue, I do have the ability to test the trigger. We're just going to run a test, and it's going to run a test, and it found my record that I just submitted a little bit ago, and here's all my information. So I can basically take that information now and I can map it. So this is like one interaction, step one. When this happens, which is new record in Airtable, what am I going to do with this? So now I can say what I'm going to do. What am I going to do with this? I'm going to say I want to send an email. So I'm just going to open up Gmail and I want the action to be send an email. I'm going to click continue. It's going to make me sign into Gmail, which I'm going to do. I have to authenticate. Once I sign in, I'm going to click continue. Now it's going to ask me to customize this email. So I want this to be, right now, I want this to be to a static person. So I'm going to add in that static person, and it's going to be from. Now this is going to default to, the from field is going to default to whatever the email is in the account. So it also can read your aliases, so you could select the default or an alias, which is really nice. If you have a Google Suite, sometimes you have a primary email address, but maybe you have 5 or 6 aliases, so you could use one of your aliases to respond. And then your from name, you could just say, I'm just going to put automations. And the subject is going to be bad feedback. And my body type is going to be plain. You could do HTML and insert pictures and all that fun stuff. I'm just going to say the feedback wasn't very good. And I can actually add, I have access to the step 1 results, so I can put in the actual grade. So I'm going to say the feedback wasn't very good. We got a, and then I just put in the placeholder for that variable. And then I'm going to hit continue. Test and continue. And there you go. It says that the continue was successful. So this all looks good, except for this automation is going to send us an email every time somebody submits, and we only wanted to send one when it was a 1. So what you do is you would add a filter. So we're going to add a filter here. We're going to click here and then click filter. And I'm going to say only continue on to step 3. So now I have a new step. So this was step 1 and this used to be step 2, but I inserted a step in between this, and I say only continue if, and I'm going to choose the option of grade. So I'm going to say if grade, and I believe grade is text. Well, hold on a second. Let me see what it is. Okay. So I believe it's a number, but we're going to test that. So we're going to say if a number is less than 2. All right. So now we're going to say when a new record in Airtable comes, only continue if the grade is less than 2, and then send an email in Gmail. So we're going to do that. I'm going to say done editing, and I'm going to turn this Zap on. Now let's see. Oh, I'm going to name it. Let's name this Zap Bad Feedback from, what did I call my restaurant? Okay. Zoe's Food Shack. All right. Now that that's turned on, I'm going to go back to Zoe's Food Shack. I'm going to open up the form, and I'm going to say John and I'm going to say feedback is the waiter wasn't very, no. Zo's Food Shack. So we're going to say the food was awesome, but I ate too much and my stomach hurts. So my experience was a 1. I'm going to submit that. Thanks for stopping at Zo's. So if we go to pricing, we'll notice that there's an update time. So your Zap does not run instantly. Your Zap runs based on a schedule. I have the professional plan as when you sign up for free, you get professional, I believe, for a trial. And so it's a 2-minute update plan, but just so you know, it's not an instant process. Pretty quick, but it's not instant. So that's something to know when you're dealing with Zapier. So let's check and see if my email is in yet. And here we go. We see that we got an email here. The feedback wasn't very good. So that is our little automation that we built out. Now, we could go and do better than that. We could add in the comment data so that it's more informative. So you could say the feedback wasn't very good, and here's the email address, and here's the comment. So the manager could respond and say, I'm sorry your experience was bad. Here's a coupon, or here's less food because it was amazing. You got a stomachache. So that's how we would build that in Zapier. Now, with that being said, let's just take a quick peek at the Zapier pricing and kind of what you'd expect to pay for automations. Here's Zapier's pricing. They have free, starter, professional, team, and company. And here's the prices per month. The Zap we created 1 Zap. So your free plan has 5 Zaps, but it only has single-step Zaps. So we created a multi-step Zap because ours was 3 steps. So ours was go respond when an Airtable record comes in. The filter was a step, and then the 3rd step was send an email. So that is a 3-step Zap. So that doesn't qualify for the free plan. You would need another plan. Also, you'll notice something here called premium apps. So Zapier has some apps that are considered premium. So the premium Zaps are here. They're listed as premium. You do not get these as built-in connectors in Zapier unless you have an account that allows premium. So if it has premium, and you want to connect to your Shopify account or Facebook leads or PayPal, you would need to get a account that allows premium. So starter, you can have 3 premium apps and 20 Zaps. So you could have Facebook ads as one of your premium apps and use that across all 20 Zaps, but you can only have 3. Professional plan is kind of where they unlock everything for you. Also, you'll notice there's other things which I'll get into in a later video of custom logic and paths. Now, professional has unlimited Zaps, so the automation we created, we could create 1 million of them, as many as you want. Now, there's also tasks per month. So task per month is how many times your automation is going to run. So if you had a very busy restaurant like Zo's Food Shack, which is super busy, obviously we're going to have thousands of positive feedback a month, every single task is going to cost us. So you're going to want to make sure that you're going to account for, when you create an automation, how often you want this thing to run. So if you have automations that send a lot of emails, or some sort of text message integration, or built into like Shopify or PayPal, and you are getting orders left and right, be cognizant of the fact that those are considered tasks when that runs, and you're going to want to include that in the price that you're going to want to pay. So that's something to think about. So that is it for my review of Zapier. Let's go over and build the same automation in Integromat. So here we are in Integromat. We are going to just jump right in and build that same scenario. We already have the Airtable created, so we're just going to dive right in. So we're going to build the same exact thing in Integromat. So Integromat, we're going to select our Airtable record. Now Integromat is different here in a couple different key ways. One is our step one doesn't need a trigger to start. We could start step one with an action. So you could start an automation with search records based on specific criteria, or retrieve a record, or whatever you wanted. So that's a big difference with Zapier and their Airtable integration, which requires that you start it with a trigger. So in Integromat, you don't have to start it with a trigger. So in Integromat, we're going to go ahead and click Watch Records. Now, this is ACID. When you watch a record, it requires created time, and Integromat behind the scenes then tracks what happens with that record and only triggers if something new happens with that. So we need to go into our Airtable and create a created time field. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now I'm in feedback. I'm going to go to grid view. I'm going to delete the empty records we get, and we're going to say created, and we're going to make this a created, not created by, created time. Then we're going to go ahead and go back here, select our demo, go to feedback, and now our trigger field is going to be created. So we could trigger on last modified, but I only want this to trigger one time. I do not want it to trigger every time something's modified. So that's what we're going to do. And now we're going to just say okay. And now we can choose where to start. So let's just say you have an existing database with hundreds of records. You could say, I want this to start immediately on everything from infinity, or I only want to start from now on. So we're going to say we want this to start from the beginning. So we're going to say all. Now we're going to run this. It's going to run this scenario, and it's going to return a result set. So I like to name things in Integromat as well. So I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to click rename, and I'm going to just rename this to get, or we'll say received feedback. Now I'm going to connect to step number 2. So notice here we can look at the result set. Here's my output, name, email, my grade, basically the data that's in there. So I can, similar to Zapier, I can bind this data. So my second step is just going to be to go to Gmail and send an email. Have to create a connection. So now I have my Google connection, and now I have a simple to, and I could say the email address, who I'm going to send to. This is going to be my person. I'm going to send this email to my manager, who's going to go ahead and hook this person up if they give a bad review. And my subject is going to be bad food review. And my content is where I put the content in, and I could say we got a bad review. And I can put the actual feedback block, and then I can put the grade. Now, we don't necessarily have to put the grade because we said the grade's going to be 1. But anyways, that's it. That is our little 2-step automation. We could go ahead and run it, and it'll go through the steps. And this is watching record, so I don't have any. So I need to force stop this. And I've got to go right mouse click it and say choose where to start and choose from everything. So it processes the records before. And it's basically going to process those records 1, 2. So it sent out an email here. We got a bad review. Now, obviously, we don't want to send all, just the ones that are less than 5. So that's where filters come in here. So you'll notice there's this little wrench here. You click here, and I say only reviews less than 2. Actually, we'll just say 1-star reviews only. And my condition would be grade is equal to 1. So now, when I run that filter, the filter is only going to run if the review is 1. And you can click on the filter. Now that I ran that automation, I can click here and I can say, and it'll just show me what the filter is in the inspector, grade equal to 1, green checkbox. So this filter was allowed to pass. So that is how you would do that same automation with Integromat. So short and sweet. The main difference here between, let's talk about pricing now with Integromat, because Integromat's pricing is a little bit different. So we can see Integromat's pricing here. They have multiple options: free, basic, standard, business, platinum, and custom. Now, a lot of people are thrown off by operations. What does operations mean? And they have something new called data transfer. So an operation is every step in your automation. So you'll notice here, let's pull the automation back up here. So you'll notice when we ran this operation, it took 2 steps to run this operation. So this operation to run, to get a review, if you had 100 reviews a day, that would be 200 operations, because you'd need an operation to get the feedback and an operation to send the mail. And there's another caveat, and that is this runs on a timer. So you can adjust this timer to save on operations, especially if you have an advanced account. You could say, I only want this to run once an hour, once a day, based on minutes. So I want this to run once a day, or I want this to run once an hour. When you have a paid subscription, you can even get more advanced. So you could say, I want this to run once a day from 9 to 5. Or I want this to run on the weekends or not on the weekends. So that is really nice for automations that might involve like text messages or other things where maybe you don't want to disturb people, or you only want these automations to run at certain intervals. So Integromat gives you that flexibility. But every time this runs, you're getting hit for an operation. So even if there wasn't any feedback that happened with some of these operations, you might get dinged with a ping. So this particular one, because it's ACID, it's a watch. So this one doesn't actually execute anything unless there's something there. So it kind of saves you a little bit. If this was a search that just said search for records, you'd get hit with an operation on the search, and then you get hit with an operation on the response. So that is also another slight difference with watches versus searches on Integromat. So otherwise, that is the Integromat workflow. You have our Integromat operation, bad feedback integration, and you have your bad feedback zap. So we have our scenario and we have our zap. So there's other differences with Integromat that Zapier doesn't have. Zapier really sticks to zaps. Here's your zaps and here's what you can do with the zaps. Integromat goes a little bit further in the sense where they have things like data stores. So you can actually store data on Integromat to share between automations. So you could have one automation that updates a variable that you want to store in Integromat, and then another automation that looks in the data store and reads it and does something with it. So depending on what you need to do, that can be really powerful. They also have the concept of blueprints. I'll be talking about that in another video as well. Blueprints basically mean I can build an automation and I can share an automation with somebody. So this automation here, if you wanted just to play with this and see this automation in action, I can export this automation with a blueprint. So I can export this, and then basically it's a file that I can share with someone, and then they can import that into their workflow and use the automation from scratch without having to rebuild it. Now they do have to connect their own Airtable and Gmail or whatever the connection is. They'll have to connect their own integrations and keys to that, but the actual blueprint and architecture of the automation would be pre-built. So that's a really, really nice feature to have. So those are some of the key differences between the two, but there are other differences as well. Like I said, with Integromat, you just have to be aware of the way they do the pricing. So first you got to see if they have the apps that you want. And if they have the apps that you want that can easily be connected, and they have the events that you're looking for, the next step is just to due diligence to see how often you want this to run. Like if you want something to run 24 hours a day and check once every 5 minutes, just make sure that you're counting the cost of the automation you're building to see what price tier you fall into. So that's it for the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment below if you want to see a certain integration or automation or another no-code tool. I'll be doing builds very often, so be sure to come back. Thanks.